Great to have you here
Welcome to the podcast.
with me and my guests from around the world. Welcome to the Simone Feiler podcast.
Welcome to this podcast.
Let's get into it, shall we? On the Simone Feiler podcast. Today, my guest is Adopt Embrace co-founder Paul Woods. Adopt Embrace is an adoption and change management partner with Microsoft, helping customers to get the most out of the Microsoft programs. They're based in Brisbane, Australia. The company's already won the Microsoft Partner Award in the Customer Lifestyle Management category. Welcome, Paul Woods. How are you going this morning?
Hey, Simone. How you doing? I'm very well. How are you? That's the way.
COVID's kind of hitting a second wave across Australia. How's things been affecting you with this?
Yeah, well, we have one of our team locked down in Melbourne right now. It's been good living through her, watching her Instagram stories, seeing how she's living her life in lockdown, but still able to serve our customers around Australia, around the world. It's interesting, as a small business, as we were saying before the call, the heartbeat of your business kind of relies on the customers that you're working with, and half of our customers have been really impacted by COVID, and they've had to shut down retail stores and let people go. And then there's the other half of our customers, which are, more healthcare, government kind of related organizations that are doubling down because they need to serve the community better. So it's been an interesting roller coaster ride. There's been a few moments there where I'm sitting on the couch watching, news updates going, how on earth are we going to get through this? But the one thing I've found in small business is you make your own luck a lot of the time. So it's, always just focusing on the next thing, focusing on how the small things we can do every day to get through it. And that's what's helped keep our team together and help us keep pushing through.
Definitely, I agree with that. And on the upside, we are all in this together. So it's not just, an isolated thing for each of us feeling lonely and alone, but we're all in it together and helping one another. But I want to go way back and find out a little bit about you. Where did you go to school and what did you want to be when you grew up?
Good question. So I am originally from New Zealand. There's a small town right at the very, very bottom of New Zealand called Invercargill. Depending on what time of the year it is, it's either the most southern city in the world or it's just a town, depending on if it's above 50,000 people or below 50,000. It's home to the world's most southern cattery, the world's most southern subway restaurant. Like there's some really important landmarks of human civilization that are in Invercargill. So I kind of grew up there for a few years, and then my dad got seconded to Brisbane here in Australia for 6 months. So we came over here when I was 7 and went to school here in Brisbane out of the Gap. Yeah, that 6 months turned into 12 months, turned into 24 months. And they said, look, we just want to stay here because it's so much better than living in Invercargill. So grew up in Brisbane, went to school out in the Gap for high school as well. University here in Brisbane as well at QUT.
And what about the workforce? Where did you enter the workforce?
Interesting. So I went into a graduate program after uni. I did information technology and marketing, like a double degree. And I went to work for the Queensland government as a graduate in one of their organisations called SciTech, which looks after all the IT for basically all the government departments here. I did that job and realised it was a pretty boring job, to be honest with you. I went through a few graduate rotations, got a feel for what work was like, but deep down, going back to your previous question, I actually wanted to be a paramedic.
Right.
So in parallel to that, I was in the State Emergency Service for 5 years, doing a lot of work with them. And then one fateful day in 2014, it would have been 2014 maybe, 15. No. I'm getting my decades wrong. 2004, 2005.
I know time just rushes by.
I know. Back then, Queensland Ambulance Service did one intake a year, and I filled out all my applications, got all the things like certified and copied and all that kind of stuff. And then I was walking down from SciTech, which was at Central Station, down to the post office to post them all in for my application. It was the last day I could get them into the post, and then this massive thunderstorm came through. And basically every single one of those certified copies, the ink had run on them, the application forms were completely mashed up, just because it was like one of those huge Brisbane downpours we get where it just dumps like Olympic swimming pools of rain on you in 5 minutes and then it's sunny again.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Oh dear, was that a sign?
And then I'm like, well, there you go. That's a sign because I can't actually post this anymore. It's all completely ruined. So the option is you wait another year, and that was the plan, to wait another year and do the intake again and just keep plugging away at the SES stuff and things like that. But then 2 weeks later, another opportunity came along, and there was an internship available at Microsoft in Brisbane, and I looked at it and thought, that would be a pretty cool brand name to have on a resume. And
Definitely.
then I looked at how much they're going to pay, and it was like basically taking a 30% pay cut from my Queensland government job. I'm like, oh my
Oh,
goodness, that's
ouch. Is that how he got
but
rich?
and ended up getting most people are paid incredibly well at Microsoft, apart from the interns, it looks like. But then I went for it and managed to get the job, and it's probably the best alternative career decision that I ever made, is going for that internship. It still would have been great being a paramedic, I think, but that course of history changed in that particular moment. Yeah, so I spent 12 months at Microsoft in Brisbane. Half the time I was burning DVDs and CDs for people and getting coffee, and the other half they said, well, here's a product we want you to launch. Here's $120,000. Can you do a product launch for us? Which, as a 21-year-old, just blew my mind that an organisation would just throw that much responsibility on someone that's green into the organisation. So I facilitated a product launch at the Brisbane Convention Centre for a bit of software that no one here will know about, BizTalk Server, but it's probably the most underrated product Microsoft ever built. And
Do you use
a
it?
lot of, well, it's for big organisations that want to get all their computers to talk to each other without humans involved. So how do you get your inventory system talking to your finance system, talking to your forecasting systems and things like that? So
Right.
in most consumer lives, we'd never know that stuff exists, but in large corporates like retailers and healthcare providers and things like that, these are the systems that basically tie everything together to make experiences like your home loan application actually work. Then you do it on the website and things like that. And Australia's largest liquor retailer, as an example, was running on this software back then. So that kind of held the fabric of the nation together to some extent. So it's a 12-month experience there. Microsoft, like any big corporate, the Brisbane office was pretty much like a rural office in the scheme of Microsoft. There's only about 30 or 40 people there. But if I wanted to continue with them, I would have had to move to Seattle, where their headquarters is, or Sydney. And in that time frame, I'd got married and I had a happy wife in Brisbane, and I have an unhappy wife anywhere else. So I decided to stay here and work for another Microsoft partner here in Brisbane, and spent 9 years and 75 days with them before I went, you know what, it's time to take my dreams and try and turn them into some kind of reality and not live life with any regret, and start my own company, which is Adopt and Embrace.
So how did you go about setting up your company? Obviously, you got a good skill set working with Microsoft.
Yeah, that's a funny story how it all started. I was actually at a Microsoft partner conference in 2015, almost 5 years ago to the day that we're recording this, actually, probably 4 years and 11 months and 2 weeks.
Not
And
counting.
not counting. And had this itch. I was like, oh, I'm getting older. Like, I was 32 at the time, and wanting, like, if I'm going to do it now, I've got to make a choice. So either stick in the job that I'm in at the moment, which is okay, it pays really well, but I don't have the spark anymore for it. It's a struggle to get out of bed every morning to actually want to bring my best to the work. Or do I go, you know what, you're young enough, if it all goes pear-shaped, you've still got time to recover.
And maybe go back to being a
and
paramedic.
maybe go back to being a paramedic,
Yeah.
or do something else, right? So I convinced myself, so at this conference, there was a few fundamental shifts in the market, which meant that if I'd done it 5 years ago, it wouldn't have worked, but in 2015, it was going to work based on where Microsoft's product sets were at, how they were compensating their salespeople. All these different things were starting to change that made it actually viable. And like, a lot of people talk about that product market fit when they think about starting a business or bringing something to market. And look, it wasn't perfect, but it was a lot better than what it was. I thought, well, that's a good sign that we could actually be willing to, risk a bit of the redraw on the mortgage that we'd saved up to try and get something off the ground. And then in parallel, one very drunk night at that conference, I was at the casino at the Gold Coast, playing Caribbean Stud for the first time.
Okay.
And I managed to turn $20 into $700, and
Nice.
off all my colleagues at the place I was working, and that just happened to be just enough money to register a company in Australia. So that's another sign that I'll take that cash off the table right now. And then I resigned a week later, and then thinking that they would put me on gardening leave and let me have 4 weeks just because I was kind of doing something a little bit competitive to what I was doing at the place I was working. I thought I'd have a 4-week holiday, a break, kind of start planning, building the business up and getting it started. But no, they made me work. So it was the longest 4 weeks of my life, working out my notice, waiting to start the company. But then on the 12th of October 2015, that was day one when Adopt and Embrace was born.
What were some of the challenges setting it up? Obviously, the first 4 weeks because you were still working for them. But what were some of the other challenges?
The biggest challenge for me is I went from being driven by my inbox every day to starting a company from scratch and having no email in my inbox. So for the first time in years, I actually had to think, what is my priority today? actually do that, as opposed to being, whatever the most urgent or important thing is at the top of my inbox anytime. That was probably the biggest thing to just get my head around. And, we've been working really hard within the company to stop that culture emerging where everything's done via email and communicate by email and things like that, to help people perform at their best. But that was challenging. It was interesting though. The very first customer that I had was my old employer. About 3 days later, they needed me to come back and help with something. So that was a good start. Like, let's get your first customer and get your first invoice out in the first couple of weeks. That's good.
That's excellent. And Microsoft.
But and I think one of the things that someone said to me once, I can't remember when it was, is if you want to start your company, as long as you know where your first 3 paychecks are going to come from, like where are the first 3 customers, the first 3 invoices you're going to raise, if you know where they're going to come from, that's enough to get started.
Right.
If you don't know where they're going to come from, then you're probably not quite ready to launch. But as soon as you know what that looks like, then you should be fine. And then you building momentum from there. And that's basically what happened. So like any person, like we don't have any investors, we don't have any capital at all. It was just the little bit of redraw we had on the mortgage and our credit card that funded it, kind of bootstrapped the company. Didn't take a salary for the first 9 months, and by the time we got to that 9-month period, the regularity of income had kind of picked up, so we built up enough working capital in the business to keep going, which was great. And it was interesting the conversation that I had with my wife in terms of, because again it's really a team effort. Decided to quit and throw a career away to start something new, and I always said to her, look, here's the deal. It was October when we started the company. The drop dead date for this is 30 June next year. So if I can't get this to work by 30 June, then I'll go back and get a job. But we're going to go head first into this up until that point. And she reluctantly, maybe a little bit, agreed to that. But it turned out for the best. We managed to get through it, and then we're paying ourselves by then, or close to then anyway. So that was good. And the thing I always told myself was, if it does go pear-shaped and doesn't work out well, it's going to be a really great story for a job interview to help set myself apart from other candidates for jobs when I was trying to come back in. So that mindset definitely allowed me to focus on doing what I needed to do and not be worried about work. But then we had kind of a really clear expectation of when we'd throw in the towel if it didn't work.
Very interesting. And so was your wife working beforehand and made the decision to you both go into this new venture, or?
No, so she has a job. She is an accountant by trade.
Right.
So she works for an accounting firm here in Brisbane, and so she is acutely aware of finances and financial things. And
Right.
I think that was her key thing as well. We have twin girls. How do we make sure we can support them? And support a family and pay our mortgage and all those other kinds of things. So she continued to work as a part-time accountant. She took a few years off to have the kids, so she'd just come back into work. So at least had a little bit of income coming in to cover just the bare necessities of mortgage and things like that, whilst we drained the rest of the redraw on actually living and paying for food and all that kind of stuff. But anything like that's a team effort, right? It's about open communication and making sure everyone's on the same page as you make those decisions and make those decisions together.
Definitely. Well, it certainly sounds like you had a lot going on with starting a company, young twins, and congratulations. You've made it through the hardest part and got to here. What are some of the advantages of running your own company?
You get to sleep in if you want to. If I go with the real advantages, for me, it's interesting, right? I think it comes down to a few things. So the first one is actually being able to look at something and say, hey, I built that, or I did that. So it's almost like this, I don't know if it's a legacy thing, but you can look at a system, or you can look at a process and say, hey, that's like I helped mold that and create that. So there's almost like achievement, maybe a feeling of achievement. Satisfaction. Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's definitely part of it. The thing for me is like I'll drive through town, or go fly to another city or something like that, and just look up at skyscrapers and see the logos on the buildings and say, hey, that's one of our customers. That's pretty cool. That's feeling of satisfaction that comes with that. Look, for me, it's seeing the impact that our team can have with each other and working together to help our customers as well. And I love seeing, like, especially like the challenge I've been going through the last few years is to unwind myself from doing everything in the business and bring new people into the business to take on, wear some of the hats that I was wearing and do some of those things and bring people in and seeing them doing a better job than you could ever do at something. And it's like, yes, that's seeing people amplify your impact, but also, amplifying each other's impact is really awesome.
Is it hard to kind of let go when you...
Oh, it's so hard. It's so hard.
You're in control and charge, and now...
It's a thing I've struggled with the most, and I think every business owner struggles with too. When you've come from being a practitioner or a technician that does the work and trying to build the structure around you to, to scale it or do things better, it's really tough. there's probably been a few mistakes made along the way in terms of like how to delegate stuff or how to package things up so people can do it. And almost every issue that I can think of that's in our business or issues that have occurred, I could point the finger right back at myself in terms of me being the bottleneck or me being the thing that got in the way of it or things like that.
Right.
So after about the 40th time you have that realization, then you start to think, right, actually, I actually need to hire someone to do that and do that properly and have the focus on it and not the 3 minutes of the day that I'd have focus on because I'm spread thin across all these different things. So it's challenging. One of the best things that I've done recently in about the last 12 months, we put an operations manager in place, which is like a good yin and yang kind of relationship where she has all the attention to detail that we need to get things actually happening, and I can think about the more forward-looking where we're going to take the company kind of stuff while she keep things actually ticking behind the scenes as well. That's been incredible, and it's one of those things where you look at the cost of hiring people, and in a small business, like most small businesses, wages and salary are the biggest cost by a long way, unless you're a product-based business. And I was gulping at the price I was going to have to pay for a good quality operations manager. The quality of the work and the quality of the team work that's happening now and all that kind of stuff. It was the best decision that we made.
So when you started employing people, how many people have you employed now?
Yeah, there's 11 of us at the moment spread across Australia. We've had someone in New Zealand before, someone in the US before, and we're kind of sitting here quietly at that level at the moment, just waiting to see what happens with the market in terms of recovery from the pandemic and things like that. Our 3-year goal from now is to have about 25, 30-ish, kind of that size business. So 2.5 times, 3 times the size we are now in 3 years. Depends on where the market goes. Obviously, if we want to invest in that, you just don't hire people for the sake of hiring people. You want them to be productive and actually doing work with customers and things like that.
When you did start recruiting people, did you recruit your friends or previous work colleagues, or did you really look for somebody that knew what they were doing?
The first person we hired was what you could loosely call slave labor. So it was
not your wife.
No. I would never say that about my wife. She might say it, but I definitely won't.
Maybe I'm speaking from their perspective.
Maybe. No, it was I did some casual teaching at QUT a while ago and have a reasonably good relationship with them. So I had a work placement student from QUT that spent 3 months with us as part of one of the subjects that he was doing, just as a work experience kind of thing. So we had him join pretty soon after we started, maybe 4 or 5 months after. And then after that 3 months was up, I offered him a job. Said, look, you've done a really great job of, through this process. I'd love to give you your first job out of uni. And so we had Tim join us as a basically junior, and he was working with me, doing workshops and helping me build stuff and doing sales stuff with me and things like that. And so that was our first hire, and then we hired as we won work and as we needed the people to come into the business. And every single time I was like, I don't know if we can afford this, but we'll do it. And then we've just managed to level up that way. And there's always been more work that comes from, building up that momentum as well. Going back to the making your own luck kind of thing, I guess before, is that you start putting the stuff in place, you start seeing the rewards of it as well. Yeah, we've had some challenges along the way with hiring the right people, maybe the right person at the wrong time, or the wrong time to hire people generally. So there's been a few ups and downs along the way, which would be like the same in any business. You don't realize that to maybe 9 months after you've hired someone, or 12 months after you've hired someone. The interview process and probation sometimes isn't enough to get that picture. Going back to your question about did we hire friends? Initially, absolutely not, and probably won't proactively go out and look for friends. What we did do, the first few people that we found were just purely through informal networks. So like I'd post a post on LinkedIn saying, hey, I need someone to do this. And then that would go to my 1,500 LinkedIn connections, and there might be 1 or 2 people that come out of that apply for it. I remember the first time we advertised on Seek, we got like 70 applications and none of them were any good. And it was just like, this is so depressing, like totally the wrong people responding to this ad. Now, fast forward almost 5 years, we've kind of rethought how we advertise for positions and how we advertise for roles, and try and make sure we put as much information as possible on job ads. So being really clear about values and how we work and what the role, how to be successful in the role, not just what the role is. We'll make sure the salary details are there. We'll even put like what questions are going to be on the interview, so you know exactly what you're coming into. And I've found that approach, that open and transparent approach, has seen the quality of candidates we get applying for roles just go through the roof, and the ones that are applying are already aligned with exactly what we're looking for, because we've given them all the details up front. So we're not playing this cat and mouse game with candidates anymore. The last couple of times we've hired, we've gone through that approach, and the caliber of candidates has been incredible. Kind of leveling up again the quality of how we do things.
That's really cool. That obviously will elevate the quality of what comes out of your business in the end, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we've got any budding entrepreneurs listening, what would be your main advice to them to, either do it or don't do it?
Yeah, good question. Good question. And I'll try not to give the cliched advice that you'd always hear about this. If you want to do it, I'd say give it a go, because you don't want to live life with regret saying, what if I did that? What if I didn't do that? Now, it's not going to guarantee you're going to be successful or not. And I wouldn't say that we're necessarily successful. Like, we're only 5 years old, or coming up to 5 years now. Like, we've still got a long way to go in terms of trying to achieve what we're trying to achieve and where we could take the business. But I'd say, yeah, don't live life with regret. If you seriously have that burning desire in your heart to start a company or start a business or to solve a problem in the world, then do it. But you don't necessarily have to do it yourself, right? So here's the interesting angle. I actually started this company 5 years before I really started this company. And I did it at my old employer as an intrapreneur, if you think of it that way. Back in 2010, I had an idea which is pretty similar to what we have now. I said, right, I think there's an opportunity for us as an organization to better serve our customers, to make more money, to increase profitability, improve our customer satisfaction, all that kind of stuff, by creating a team that solves this particular problem. And I either want to do it myself and leave and go and build the company, or I could do it inside the organization. And you can still pay me a salary, you can still pay me a regular fortnightly or monthly cash into my bank account, but I'll build it for you as a company. So there's an opportunity out there if you don't want to go and make the leap and do it yourself, to work with your current employer or another employer and say, look, I want to build this for you, and kind of have that entrepreneurial spirit, but just inside an organization. And that absolutely reduces the risk for you. You're still going to get paid. You're going to get your salary coming in like you're normally doing, but it gives you the opportunity, if you've got a supportive employer to do it, to experiment, to try new things, to try and create something of value for them, but also their customers as well. So I did that inside my old employer for the last 5 years that I worked there. Thinking back to 2010, if I had made the choice to go and do it myself at that stage, I would have been bankrupt in 3 months because the product market fit wasn't right there. That 5 years gave me an opportunity to make a whole heap of mistakes while someone else was paying for it, and learn the lessons and think about how these things do. So it's almost like this apprenticeship that occurred to start up a company that happened within my previous employer. So don't be afraid to, if you look at it and go, right, we can't risk it because of house or car loans or family or things like that. There's still opportunities to do that, have that kind of spirit within your current employer, or if you find an employer that has supports that kind of thinking. So that's one bit of advice, I guess. The other one I said a bit earlier, which is if you're going to make the leap, make sure you know where your first 3 paychecks are going to come from. If you have a clear understanding of that, then I think you'll be fine. And it'll just give you enough momentum to get started. Don't quit your job and then go, right, what am I going to build now? And how are we going to make money out of this? Like, you need to be clear about that first. Yeah, exactly. You have to be clear about that business model. You don't have a perfect business model, but you need to get an idea of where you're going to get money from. The one thing I know is that when we started the business, the easiest, fastest way to make money is to sell your mind and sell your time to help other people solve problems, right? So that's a pretty quick way to get started. It's not necessarily the most scalable way to do it long term, but in terms of if you're looking for quick, fast cash, if you're bootstrapping to get something started, that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot more complexity to that if you're thinking about a product business, or you're wanting to start a coffee shop, or there's lots of capital that's involved to get those kinds of things up and running. The business that we started, it was pretty much just, I needed a laptop and an internet connection, and that's enough of an investment in infrastructure to actually start delivering value to customers. So depend on the business or idea that you have as to how easy that transition would be, I think. And then the other bit of advice I'd say is, make sure you're being open and transparent and communicating with your close family, if you're married or if you're in a relationship or something like that, because even though it might be you doing the work, it's still a team effort in terms of the rest of your life and things like that. And I've seen a few people go through this process and end up in a broken home at the end of the process. And you don't necessarily want that to occur. You don't want the business to be everything in your life and you forget about everything else that's there. But it's easy to fall into that trap.
So what about then starting businesses with COVID, this situation? There's a lot of businesses closing down, particularly restaurants, I guess, and cafes where the public all gather. What do you think the likelihood of being successful in starting a business would be right now?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I think, like any of these questions, the answer would be it depends. I think context and specific circumstances make a huge impact on these kinds of things. I think for the businesses that are currently in business, the ones that will survive and thrive are the ones that have built some kind of resilience into their business beforehand and are able to move quickly to identify and take advantage of new revenue streams. And I think about a lot of like restaurants and cafes, that the quick shift to like from dine-in to 100% online order takeaway kind of thing is an example of that, right? So the ones that have been able to make that transition quickly have been a lot more successful and probably in a better position now than those that maybe waited a month or two to actually make that happen. Gyms and personal trainers, another great example. The ones that went, right, I'm going to do all of my classes via Zoom or via video conferencing so I can maintain that connection with my customers and things like that. They're the ones that moved faster, found a way to still deliver service. Yes, it was a different way than what they probably intended to originally, but they were still able to solve that problem for their customers. And so they were able to thrive, right? So I think, organisations like that, I think from a current point of view, are in a far better position. And it's not going to be easy, but definitely in a better position. Within our business, as an example, we're kind of shifting towards trying to push a lot of digital delivery of our work before COVID came. Ideas and then the frameworks we put in place already, we were able to transition away and go, look, we don't need to just have our customers in Australia. So like last week, we were serving a customer in Greece. 2 weeks ago, we had a customer in the United States. We had a customer in Paraguay. So we've been able to open up our addressable market because of the constraints that have been put in place. And I think that gives a segue into the point you're trying to make around starting a business now, is that you can start a business now with no legacy. Like there's no expectations. Like if you started it 12 months ago, people would expect you to, like in our business, to go and do a face-to-face meeting with them to have a sales conversation. They'd expect you to go and do a face-to-face workshop. They'd expect you to ship some kind of physical product, to do something like, here's a printed workbook or something like that we need to give to someone. And I think the silver lining of all of what's happening at the moment is that all those assumptions that everyone needs to have around business have basically been thrown out the window.
Yeah.
And now you can have a sales conversation over a video call. You can have a sales conversation with your kid hanging off your shoulder, because that's just what happens now. Everyone understands that's the reality that we're in. Again, it's almost like this true democratization of business to some extent, is that as long as you have an internet connection and some kind of like a device, an iPad, a laptop or something like that to connect with people, then you actually have so much more opportunity to engage with people than you might have had 3 months ago, 4 months ago. I think the opportunity is huge. I mean, for us, it means that we can truly become an international business, but live the best life we can here in Australia, and not have to set up shop in other locations. We can just do it all here from where we are.
It's really opened up the planet, hasn't it? It's made us come together really closer in a smaller place. Like it's all at our fingertips, really.
There's a global opportunity that exists for anyone, and whether you're in a service business or if you're building intellectual property like software or things like that, I think obviously there's a lot of upside or scale that's potentially there. The other thing just generally is that problems or challenges are at the heart of starting a business. No one starts a business just because they start a business because they want to solve a problem. There's an issue they see or a challenge they see or something that frustrates the hell out of them they want to fix. That's why people start businesses. And I think there's plenty of those frustrations and challenges around at the moment that I think there's going to be a brand new wave of people going, this problem that we always thought that we had, now we really know that we have it. Now I've got an idea of how we can fix it. Whether that's a product that they build. The classic example would be I'm going to totally bastardize this story, but you'll be able to find the reference for it somewhere. There was an organisation, I think in Melbourne, that built like staging for theatre shows and things like that. So they'd go and build the stage and the props and things for the show. And then when COVID came along, like obviously all the theatres shut down. There's no need to build any stages anymore or any stage scenery anymore.
Yeah.
And they basically transitioned their business within 2 weeks to solve a problem, which is one of their team had to have their kids at home for school, and they didn't have a desk. So they basically built a business building these temporary, very quick flat pack desks, using all the same skills and equipment they had for the scenery for stages. So now they've built not only this product range, it's not just desks, but it's all the accessories you'd have around a temporary office. And it's just incredible to see the complete pivot of that business. Again, because there's here's a problem that we need to solve, apart from keep our people in gainful employment, but it's also something that was at the heart of a problem that needed to be solved by pretty much every family in Australia at that time.
Genius.
So I think just looking out for those problems and identifying those frustrations, I think there's lots of those around at the moment. I think it might be less about picking one, it's picking the right one that you can kind of put your passion behind for a few years to make it real.
Are you a standalone company, or are you still, because you said you had your internship with Microsoft, are you part of Microsoft as such?
No. So there's actually two companies. There's one in Australia, one in New Zealand. We're a separate entity, but we do have a close relationship with Microsoft. So we're what they call a Microsoft partner, gold partner, with a few different advanced specializations and things like that on top of it. Loosely, I think Microsoft said the other day we'd be in the top 1-2% of partners in Australia in terms of that relationship. Which is cool. It is cool.
So what benefits do you reckon that your customers have using Adopt and Brace techniques?
Oh, look, for us, it's around impact. Like, how can we help you make an impact with the work that you do, and how do these technologies help amplify that impact? Depending on which lens you look at this through, there's organisations that say save millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars based on advice that we give in terms of not only being able to not pay for other tools that they might be paying for as well, but also just purely from being able to streamline a business process, which means that they can reduce cost or improve the revenue throughput that comes through as well, which is exciting for us because we can see a real impact of that work. And then on the flip side of that, like, you look at the individual experience where we might talk to someone and they have that earth-shattering light bulb moment and just realize they've been doing it the wrong way for the last 20 years of their career.
Yeah.
And there was so much of a simpler way to do things, and they just, because they didn't explore outside of the box or been shown how to do things. There's this interesting, back when we did stuff face-to-face with people actually in person, like the amount of times that I've had someone
In the olden days, turn around and just hug me, or like you see their jaw drop and like the tongue almost roll out of their mouth, like in the cartoons. Like, how did I not know that? Right? You were very good at instructing like that. There's just one example from when you did your audio book, when you said, "Look, you can get those smiley faces up by pressing the window and the full stop." I've been using that ever since. I mean, it's not like going to change my whole business, but it was like, what?
Change his relationship with your daughters. You can get the emojis,
doesn't it? I showed them a thing or two, I can tell you.
Exactly. This and then the moment you tell people that that's been in the product and it's actually been on the front page, right at the front of the menu since 1993, and they go, "Oh my goodness, like that's my entire working career, and I've totally didn't know about that," right? So there's different angles to it. So we think about it from an individual level, it's around helping you be more effective in your role and just get stuff done so you can get your lunch break back, get out of the office on time. But then at an organizational level, it's around how can we actually help you achieve your mission and do it in a more efficient, more effective way. Ultimately saves you a whole heap of cash, helps you make a whole lot more money, and do it in a way that keeps your employees engaged and actually loving working where you work.
That's what everyone wants.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mentioned your audio book. You've released your first book. It's in print and audio book, Adopt and Embrace, a manager's guide to communication, collaboration and coordination with Microsoft Teams. You co-authored the release with Helen Blunden, Benjamin Elias and Daryl Webster. How did you team up with these guys, and how did this all start?
Well, the teaming up was really easy because they worked for us. So it's a project inside our business, right? So how did it start? It's a good one. So anyone that has, the last couple of months in particular, you might have noticed if your organization has Office 365 or Microsoft 365, pretty much every organization that we know of has rolled out either Zoom, which is what we're using for this recording here, or Microsoft Teams, which is Microsoft's video conferencing / communication / collaboration tool set as well. So it does a little bit more than Zoom. Zoom's really good at the video conferencing bit. Teams does video conferencing plus a few other bits and pieces.
Right. And probably if you were going to interview me, you would have used Teams, yeah?
Yeah. But I don't mind. I'm not going to get shot by Microsoft for using Zoom for an interview. That's okay.
Yeah.
A lot of organisations recently would have rolled it out. And again, for simple stuff like this, so just having a video call or a conference like this, most people can pick that up pretty easily. And there's a reason for us to engage. We figure out the buttons we need to press when we get there. With Microsoft Teams, because it's more than just a single point of functionality like video conferencing, there's so much more we can do with it. One of the challenges for a lot of managers and a lot of team leaders is like, well, how do we actually use this to help run my team better? Or how do we use this to take this meeting process or committee meeting process that we have, and how do we just make that easier so we're not carrying bundles of paper around with us to meetings, and we're not printing out 400 pages of board notes for a board meeting for each of the board members. So we saw that there was a gap in the market for a book. Yes, there were some Microsoft Teams books already in the market that were around the technical side of it, how to set up Microsoft Teams, how to configure it, how to do the security on it really well, all those bits and pieces. But there was nothing that actually spoke to anyone outside of IT, like someone who was a sales manager or an operations manager or a salesperson or a receptionist, CEO, or everything in between, right? And through our work with customers, there was this consistent conversation we were continuing to have. How do I set it up to make it work for my team? When is the right time to set it up? How many of these teams should I set up? What's the right structure we should have in terms of the channels for the particular business problem I'm trying to solve? And through that iteration with customers, we built a bit of a framework that would help us describe, these are the things you need to go through to make sure you set yourself up for success. So with that framework we had there, based on our in-person work plus this identified gap in the market, we thought, well, let's mash those two things together and actually write a book that leverages that framework, that tells a story to help any manager, actually, without the help of IT, be able to get their head around how they could make this tool a really useful tool for them and their team and the people that they work with. But, actually, this time last year, we started writing it, end of July, early August. We released it on ebook and paperback the first week of December. So it took us about...
That's not long.
It was very, very fast,
Yeah,
in the scheme of producing a book. Yeah, so we worked with a book coach, Kat Mora, to help bring that all together. She kind of helped us with organising an editor and the layout and things like that, which was great. And kind of took the pain away from writing the book, I guess, because we could just focus on the ideas and getting it on paper, and then the mechanics of bringing it together. Hiring a professional to do that made a lot of sense.
That's always a good thing.
Saved us a whole bit of time and got us to the point where we could get it out very quickly. We had a compelling event we're trying to target for a release date, or at least get the pre-sales up for it. There's a big Microsoft conference in the US around in the November timeframe. So we basically launched a pre-sale when that conference was on. Sold the ebook at like $2.99 US just to get a few people in there. Pre-sold 250 copies of it. Like, that's good.
Wow,
so
that's
at least,
excellent.
yes, it's cheap, but we've got a good market for it. And then as soon as we released it, all these people said, "Oh, when are you doing the audiobook?" I'm like, "Oh, you don't want to listen to me talk."
I was going to ask you, who came up with you narrating it?
Lots of demand for an audiobook from people. I said, "No, just read it. Like, you don't need me to read it for you." But it kept coming up again and again and again. Yeah, to be completely honest, the reason why I narrated it is because we found Brisbane Audiobook Production, and I'm the only one of the co-authors actually based in Brisbane.
Right.
So it came down to something as simple as that.
You did a good job on your narration for not having done that before.
Thank you. Frustrating experience of my life, I think.
Really?
I think
you did not show that, Paul, at all. I thought you were born to do this.
Say that sentence again. No, you need to do that sentence again. No, do that sentence one more time.
It wasn't that bad. Listen to it. You can't even hear that.
That's a good editing job, I think. That comes down to like hiring Kat, the book coach, and working with yourself to bring the audiobook together. Like, yes, we could have muddled our way through self-publishing without Kat and without yourself. We could have done an audiobook without you, but I can guarantee you I'd still be recording the audiobook right now and it would never be finished, and it would be another year till it gets released, and it would be a really poor quality compared to what we've got now, right? So picking your battles with yourself in terms of the stuff you can do and where you want to get someone who actually knows what they're doing to do it is a very worthwhile investment, that's for sure.
Would you recommend other authors narrating their work? You just said it was awful and you'd still be doing it.
Yeah, look, it was awful, but it was still good. I think the thing for me, it forced me to realize there's still a lot of work to improve in the book when we actually published it. So reading it back a few months later and going, "Oh, did we really say that? Or I would have said that a little bit differently now." And actually going through the process of doing that, it helped me understand like lessons that we could learn for the next book. This is a really strange thing now, right? People will reach out to me on LinkedIn or send us emails and things like that and say, "Hey, I heard you talking about this." Like, so they've already heard me engage with them and they've heard us talk about this particular topic or subject or things like that. From a building authority point of view, and from a marketing and branding point of view, like that's just gold. Like, you've already made a personal connection with your target audience or your target market. And particularly when we're in this distributed world now where we're not going to be seeing people face to face anymore, we don't have the opportunity to spend time together in person. That personal connection through voice or through video, so people can actually see you, hear you, and engage with you in that way, I think that's going to be what's going to differentiate a lot of companies from the successful companies or successful salespeople or successful marketers from the people that just sit back and rely on text or rely on a website text or things like that. So adding richness with audio and adding richness with video, I think that's going to be huge moving forward. And I think the audio book absolutely helps us do that. And we see the stats come in every month of how many people are listening to the book, and there's a thirst for that as well. People want to listen to stuff when they're going for their walk around the neighborhood, or they want to listen to stuff that they don't have a commute to work anymore necessarily where they would listen to audiobooks, but they're finding other ways to listen to audiobooks as well. So even though it was a frustrating process and I felt like I was pulling my hair out at some stages to get my tongue around, my mouth around the different words that were written in the book and things like that. Don't ever put Greek phrases or Latin phrases in the book if you're going to do an audio book, because you've got to figure out how to actually pronounce them when you go and do it. But yeah, I think there's a fundamental shift coming, and I think it's already started to some extent, where video and audio in particular will be one of the only ways you can remain connected with your customers or your potential customers. And the advantage of that is you can also do it at scale, and you don't have to travel around the world. You can do it from a laptop, from the earphones, or someone listening to an audiobook, or anywhere in between.
Do you listen to audiobooks?
No, not at all. I've never listened to an audiobook in my life, actually.
Right, apart from yours. Oh, and that's when you were baby.
I didn't even listen to mine.
Did you listen to it?
I couldn't listen to it. I listened to the first bit and went, oh my goodness, I hate that voice. No,
That's not nice.
I don't listen to audiobooks. I listen to podcasts though.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few
so you'll be
podcasts
listening back to our
subscribe
podcast.
Well, yeah, absolutely. All your other guests, I'm very interested in hearing about them. Me, not so much. But yeah, I think my listening habits for audio are very much mostly on the commute. If I'm going for a walk around the neighbourhood, I'll listen to something as I'm going for a walk, or if I'm going for a run, I'll plug in the Bluetooth headphones and listen to stuff for 40 minutes or things like that. You're doing something that isn't work related, you can kind of escape into another world and learn something new, or hear a different story, or things like that as well.
So can we get an insight as to what you listen to when you're having your downtime?
You don't want to know. It's all boring stuff. There's a few entrepreneurship kind of podcasts, a few news and current affairs ones, but I actually tried to avoid the news and current affair ones recently because they tend to just drag you down a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but for me, it's just, I want to listen to learn. Yeah.
So, well, what's next for you guys?
We take an approach of planning for the worst but hoping for the best at the moment. So, like, to be completely transparent with you, I'm not 100% sure what the economy is going to do over the next 6 months. And I don't think anyone does. Like, even if you ask the economists, I don't think they really know what's going to happen. We're being a little bit conservative in terms of that. We've gone through a process of cutting unnecessary costs out of the business. So things that were the nice to have things, we've kind of pulled them back and just stuck with the have to haves for now. And, in the future, I look forward to bringing those nice to haves back into it, but it's kind of trying to play it through that way. But then being just solely focused on, serving our customers and serving, prospect customers to help them have an impact and help them navigate through this. Doing a lot of work with, healthcare providers and schools and universities to help them transition to this new way of working. And I think we've gone through this brute force approach of it over the last 4 months, and now people are realizing it's got to be a little bit more sustainable for the long term. I think there's a great opportunity for us to help them. Whenever dips like this happen, there's always an upside that comes after it.
That's right.
Exactly. You want to be ready to take advantage of that,
exactly.
and not just drop everything when you're going through the little dip that we're going through at the moment.
That's right. Beautiful way to look at it. Very positive. So where can people find you? How can they get in touch with?
Yeah, so adoptandembrace.com, that's the website where you'll find out more about us and who we are and what we do. If anyone is continuing to listen to this story right now and wants to learn more or connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn, just search for Paul Woods. You can find me there. I'm on Twitter at Paul Woods. If you want to hear random thought bursts from me every now and then. I think for us, we just love connecting with people to help try and understand what they're struggling with, what's the time-consuming, frustrating stuff they do every day at work, and see how we can help you overcome those things with the tools that are at your fingertips. And if we can do that and help you make an impact, that's what gets us out of the bed in the morning, and that's what helps us keep sane at work, and ultimately look back and say, hey, we've done a good job at the end of the day. So
well, I think it's a very good time for you guys, because obviously you're doing things online and making, improving things. So no better time than doing it now for people, because this is what we need. We need improvement online. So thank you. And thank you for chatting with me today. Been enlightening.
Yeah, no worries at all.
And I look forward to recording your next aaudiobook with you. You said you're writing
Maybe one of the other co-authors.
He really hawked at that, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. We're writing it, but there's other co-authors in Brisbane this time that could do it this time and do it better than I could. So.
Oh, don't be so harsh on yourself. Well, excellent talking to you, Paul, and all the best. Look forward to chatting with you again soon, okay?
Catch you later, bye.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
And my guests from around the world.
Thank you for being a part of this show.
The Simone Feiler Podcast. Catch you next time.
It's a wrap.